So here we are back for another one of my time-lapse model build videos. This is actually, it's part one of this aircraft, but it's one of two F-82s that I'm building, and I'm using the Modelcraft F-82E. Not the best kit, but you'll see some of the challenges I have with this kit as we go through the process. I just managed to scratch open a scab on my hand, and now I'm bleeding. Awesome. There is a model kit, a full review of this that I have done. I'll put a link up above to get to that full review if you guys do want to see that. If you have any questions or concerns on anything on what I'm doing throughout this build, by all means, down below in the comment section, throw me a comment. I'm more than happy to answer anything as we go. Now, this isn't the kit I'm actually working on. This is another one I have that I had. It's one of the three of the, this is one of the three kits. So I'm currently building two, which you'll see in these time-lapse builds. This is the F-82E you're seeing. The other one was an F-82G that I'm modifying this kit. This is the third one I have that I'm still got in the stash in the closet. This kit that I'm building came as a bagged kit like this that I purchased off of eBay a number of years ago. And it came with, bought two sets of bagged kits, both of which I'm working on. And then it came with one set of photocopied instructions and no decals for either kit. So you'll see kind of the, as I said, some of the process I'm going through to get this built, and it's been fun. Let's just say that. So being part one, this video is going to cover everything up to the point that the aircraft is primed and ready for paint. Everything from that point on to a finished model will be covered in part two, which will release probably a few months after this one does. But when it does release, depending on when you're watching this, down below in the description, I'll have a link to part two, so you can jump over there and take a look at that when you're finished this video, or just if you want to jump over there and see that part first, it's up to you. Do whatever you want. But let's get right into this. We'll see the time-lapse build of my F-80, my Modelcraft F-82E. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. As usual with these aircraft kits, I do get started on the cockpit. As this is an F-82, there's two cockpits, so there's a bit of extra work that I need to put in to make sure they look right. It's like you'll see with this kit, it's not the greatest, so it took a little bit of effort to get the cockpit looking right. Some pretty soft details on it, but overall I just made it work. Some interior green, picked out some details, a little bit of dry brushing. You're not going to see much through the canopies anyway, so as long as it looks decent enough through the canopy, then I'm happy. So here we are at a point where I can start prepping for paint. And that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm just painting this with the usual Vallejo interior green chromate. Simple, basic, easy. Using the alligator clips to hold on to the bits. I just made this piece up if you're wondering what that is. This is just some MDF with some holes drilled in it, and then these are just alligator clips I picked up off Amazon. And works out really well. I don't have to worry about getting overspray paint on anything. I can hold, I can twirl, I can do what I need to do. Really easy way of painting. And yeah, there we go. All set to go for paint. Let's head over to the room. We'll get this painted. So here you'll see me taping the fuselages together, and I'm not gluing the fuselages together yet. I'm just doing this in order to ensure that the cockpits are oriented properly. There is little to no locating tabs or markings or anything to ensure these cockpits sit in the proper location. So I'm just putting the taping the fuselages together to ensure that when that cockpit is glued into one half, it sits at the right angle in the right place. And then once it dries, I can go ahead and get the full fuselage glued together after the fact. And apologies, everybody. I realized I started working, I glued part of this together. I was playing around with this. I did a bunch of work on this kit and never had the camera running. So apologies on that. But you know, it happens sometimes. Anyways, for what you missed, there was a bit of gluing on this, and I had some issues with this not fitting properly. Anytime I kind of pinched the fuselage together the way it was supposed to, I ended up with the cockpit piece popping. And I think there was some issues with some residue in there, so I cleaned up. Let's clean up on this. I cleaned up almost this one. I cleaned up. Oh, you know what? I think this was the one that I had issues with. So I went through and I cleaned up in here so that this cockpit piece would fit tight. And then on this one, I glued the instrument panel in. So that's what I did on these two. Similar to the issue I had with the G model, if you watched that, it's time lapse already, the pins on the fuselage halves, there's three. I shaved the back one off. There's two left here, the locating pins. The pins themselves are bigger than the holes, so I'm just using a small drill to drill those out, and then I'm just sanding around the pin opening so that it's flush, and then the fuselage should fit together a bit more tightly, and I don't have as much fighting with it later. Yeah, see, that's a much tighter fit than it was. So that's just a small step you have to make sure everything fits together. So this is ready to glue. I'm going to clean up my mess here a little bit. So yeah, that fuselage ready to glue. This fuselage I've started to glue together already. Have I? Or did I just glue the... I think I just glued the seat back, and I think I just glued the cockpit in, and I haven't actually... Yeah, you know what? I haven't started gluing the fuselage together. I just taped the fuselage together to get the canopy or the cockpit floor to sit in the proper orientation. So I want to start gluing this together. But yeah, so you can see I had to clean up in here. I shaved out a bunch of that, the same as that, and I sanded the fuselage halves together to try to get a better fit. And here I start gluing the fuselages together, and I'm using my pretty standard procedure where I start at one end and then slowly work my way around the edges of the fuselage, glue one area, let it set and dry, move to the next, and that way I ensure that all the fuselage halves line up properly. There's no giant steps or offsets, and I get it as close to being true as possible. As I've mentioned a few times, this kit is really soft in detail, so getting it lined up properly has issues. There's short shots, there's over molding, the fuselages don't line up very well, so you're just kind of doing, at least I did the best I could, and I knew there would be a lot of cleanup on the back end to make sure it looked good. And here I start doing some of the cleanup on the fuselage. You'll see when I build this, I kind of do it in stages. I do a bit of assembly and then I clean up seams. Then I do a bit of assembly, then I clean up seams. Because the kit requires so much cleanup in order to hide a lot of the seams, the only way to do it is to do it in small stages like this. If you try to assemble the entire kit and then go through and fix the seams, there's going to be so much misalignment and issues. So it's kind of, you'll see I get the fuselages glued together, make sure the fuselage seams are clean. And then I'll get the wing, the center wing section, I make sure those are clean. And then I get the outer wing sections and I make sure those are clean. And you got to do it in little steps. Otherwise, you're just going to overwhelm yourself and completely lose interest in finishing the model.
So we are plugging along here on this F-82, and I'm getting very close to getting everything assembled. Now, I don't know what order these videos are going to come out on, whether this E model build will come out before my G model build. But if the G model build came out first and you watch that, then chances are most of what you're seeing is duplicate. And if this one came out first, then when I release the G model, you're gonna see pretty much all the same thing over again, because they're pretty much exactly the same builds. I'm doing things, I apologize if you can't hear very well over the course of me sanding here. I'm doing things slightly different between the two builds, partially because I'm trying to keep things interesting so I don't lose interest in building these. Also, I am building the G model slightly ahead of this one, so I'm learning a few things on that build that I'm applying to this build. Again, kind of making build sequence just a little bit easier, and I kind of know what to expect. I know where some of the weak points are going to be between the two kits, so I'm just kind of using a little bit of the learning sequence from that one on this one. A little bit of difference between the two. Again, I don't know what order the videos are coming out on, but you'll see things like this. I'm using the kit canopies and I'm gluing the wheels up, whereas on the other ones I'm using aftermarket canopies and the wheels are going to be down. So there's a bit of a difference in a bit of the building cycle. But basically right now, if you haven't really been following along, just to, you know, where I am on this, gear doors are glued in. I've done a little bit of super glue, and I believe it's been a few weeks since I've worked on this kit. I believe I used a little bit of baking powder with the super glue just to give these gear doors a little bit of strength. So I'm just going to give them a quick sanding here. Apologies for that, I had to take a quick phone call. So yeah, as I said, I'm just giving this a quick sand, just making sure everything in here is looking okay. I'll do more when I get a coat of primer on it. This is just kind of a quick, it's gonna need a bit of putty as well. I know this is gonna need a bit of work. These gear doors did not fit very well. They were really never designed to be built with wheels up. It's just one of those issues early these kits had, especially some of the short run kits and the older built kits. They were just designed to have the doors down. They were never engineered with the proper shape or size, or, you know, especially with like the giant, you know, attached hinge points and stuff like that. They just weren't engineered, designed, or sized to be mounted closed. So it takes quite a bit of effort to get things where you want them. I'm not going to worry too much, because if you look at real aircraft, these gear doors usually have a little bit of an odd fit to them. They're not super tight fitting. So I just want it to look decent, and it's going to be on a stand, so you're not going to see the worst of it. I think I'm probably going to leave it there. Wait till I get a coat of putty on, a primer I should say, and then I can go through and clean up some of these little holes. Just do some spot filling just to clean up the worst of it, but I think I'm going to leave it at that. Fuselage, again, we're getting, it's just the little things at this point. Making sure all these little corners and edges are cleaned up nice. I still have to put the tips of the tails on. That's going to finish up around the rudder. I'll probably do that next. And then I got to glue the two fuselages to this center piece. And I had a lot of problems when I did the G with this. The fit's a little bit better on this one, but you can see perfect example is back here. If I put this on and I hold the front steady, and you got this side and this side more or less lined up properly, and there's no real gaps. If you look back here, when this fuselage blends here, you have this massive gap on this side. And you can't have that because the trailing edge of the wing is gonna meet, it's gonna look horrible. So you have to squeeze this down to get that trailing edge where it's gonna look good. And then you have this giant, massive step. And it's the same thing I had on this G1 that's sitting here. And it involves a ton of, there's this weird panel right here that kind of sticks out. I think it's supposed to represent, if it's similar to the D in the earlier model Mustangs, this is supposed to represent the oil cooler escape. When the air goes in the front, the air comes through a duct and comes up into here, and the radiator is sitting in here, and well, it's actually sitting over here. The air comes up through the radiator and then exhausts out this rear duct, but then the oil cooler sits below it. So there's another duct of air that goes to the oil cooler and then gets ducted out of this right here. And I think that's what that is supposed to be representing. It's a horrible representation of the oil cooler door because it's just a panel, but that's my suspected idea of what that is. And so I'm just gonna sand that off. So I sand off, and I did it on the G already, I sand off this little panel, and then that gives me the ability to blend and putty everything I need to ensure that all of this area looks decent. I'm gonna lose a lot of this detailing on these panels here. I can try to rescribe some of it later, put some pinholes, try to make it look pretty again, but that side's gonna need a lot. And if I look at this side, it is significantly better. See, I don't understand. This side fits perfect and this side doesn't. And I think it was the same. Yeah, literally. Look, here's the G I'm building and you can see it's exactly the same. The right side fits nicely. The left side has this massive step that involves tons of putty and super glue to fill it in, and this still needs a lot of work. Crap. So it's not fun. But like I said, I'm learning my lessons on that G model and I'm applying it to this E model. So I think my next step now, I'm gonna glue this center section onto the wing, and I'm gonna get these tails glued into place, and then I can start puttying and sanding again. But yeah, life of these kits. So let's continue on. Let's get that done.
And here I'm gluing that center wing section in now that it's ready. And you'll see just the sheer amount of clamping that's required to get everything to hold tight. And even then the gaps are massive, and there's a ton of super glue and putty and sanding and everything to clean it up and make it look right. So it's definitely a piece of work, this kit, and it takes a lot of skill and patience to get it to look right. So we're getting very close to being ready to hit a coat of primer on this. I'm probably going to prime this E before the G just for a couple of reasons. One, the wheels are closed on this, so there's less kind of masking that needs to be done before I hit with primer. As well, the canopies are going to be closed. So again, they're both at the same stage. I mean, here's the G right beside it. So they're both effectively at exactly the same stage. But I want to really test the seams And they're both pretty much identical other than the gear doors. So I figure if I can get this one primed first, I can see where the weak points are and I can fix them on the G before I hit the primer. It's a lot easier to fix seams before primer versus after primer, but I want to hit it with primer first and get a good look and make sure I'm not missing anything glaringly obvious. I haven't put the radiator inlets on yet. Again, that's gonna be something I'll do after I hit it with primer. I think it's easier to clean them up some of these seams before that's on versus after. But that's where we are. I've still got to put the horizontal stabs in. This is the G model stab, but it's really easy just to pop it in here after the fact and then clamp it in after. So I gotta drill some holes in it. But yeah, I'm gonna install the horizontal stab after. When I get a coat of primer on it, make sure all the seams are good, and then I can go back around and hit the primer. So the next step I want to do is install the canopies. If you haven't noticed yet, I have made up my own custom masks. You can see here I used my Cricut. First time I've ever done this. I traced the outline of the windows on a piece of masking tape, transferred it to this piece of paper, scanned it into the computer, turned that into Photoshop, traced it, SVG, Cricut, cut them, played with the sizing, and it worked out really, really well. I'm gonna mask here with masking tape, but I'm gonna start gluing that on. So that's the next step. I'm gonna get the canopies glued on. I'm also not using the gun sight because, does that look like a gun sight to you? It's not even focusing. That doesn't look like anything. So I'm not gonna use the gun sight. I'm just gonna live with it. Anyways, moving on, get the canopies glued on. And now I'm starting to get those canopies glued on. Again, the fit is not the greatest. There's quite a bit of sanding and cleaning up required. And you'll see when the actual rear bubble part of the canopies go on, I could not get them to fit right. I have no idea if I did something wrong or if it's the kit or what I did. I had to do quite a bit of sanding and modifications to even try to make it fit as good as it did. And there were still just massive, massive gaps everywhere. So again, be prepared to put a lot of effort and elbow grease into getting these kits to look good. So you can see here I'm starting to get those outer wing sections glued together. I also have a coat of primer on the fuselage just to get a good look at where things stand. At this point, I still have a lot of extra touch-ups I need to do. Some more puttying, some more sanding. There's quite a bit of seams that still need work, so I have to poke through all of that, as well as I said, get those outer wing panels glued together, assembled, and starting to get prepared to gluing those on. Quick update here on the status of the kit. Canopies are glued on, as you've been following, and I've been cleaning up around the edges. There were some significant gaps around the back end of the canopy here, and I've been going through with some white glue and just trying to jam the glue under there. It's getting a lot better now. There's still a little bit of undercutting on it, especially on this side. I'm gonna have to add some more white glue on this side. This one doesn't look quite as bad. It's not gonna be perfect. You're definitely gonna see an outline around the canopies, but I'm just trying to get as much of that undercutting filled in as possible with the white glue. But yeah, it's coming along. I'm hoping once I get a little bit of sanding going on along here, get some of this white glue residue peeled off. Just have the white glue. Yeah, let's see, now I'm creating this whole like problem. Ugh. Anyways, it's gonna take a little bit to figure out this process. That kind of works there, but anyways, I gotta just get through here. I gotta clean this up. I gotta make sure, once I get a coat of the interior green around the canopy, and I really got to look at what that's going to look like, it'll better dictate what my next steps are. But I'm still got to do at least one more round of adding some white glue underneath the back of here, getting that. It'll also help bond that canopy down, which will be nice, but I got to get one more round of that finished, get these gaps filled underneath these canopies. And I did a lot of prep work. As I'm sure you were seeing, I got the canopies all glued together. I tried to square everything off. I did everything I could with this potato to get it to work, and it still didn't want to work right. I even sanded down the inside of the canopy frames to account for the shape of the fuselage, and I sanded the fuselage down behind the canopies to accommodate for that internal canopy structure. And it really did absolutely nothing. Neither one of those tasks really kind of solved the issue of these canopies sitting significantly higher off the model than I believe they're supposed to, but I don't know what else I can do to solve that problem. So it's just going to be a mitigate the issue as much as I can. I'm thinking what I'm doing here is going to solve a lot of the issues and clean it up and make it look clean when I get the that first coat of paint on. So that's that next step. One more round of white glue underneath these canopies. hit it with the interior green. That's also going to like lock up and solidify all of these clear parts, and allow me to really see how these seams look and if I missed anything, and I can go through and touch everything up, and then it's ready for primer. And then I can go ahead and do some other steps. I also got the wings cleaned up a little bit. They're not assembled yet, but they're off the sprues and the basic shapes have been cleaned. Oh wow, anyways. And then the bottoms, I have the holes drilled for the rocket mounts, but I've still got to figure out dehydral and all that stuff. How they're all gonna mount, figure that out. I'll deal with that later. Just working right now on getting this done and getting ready for primer. So yeah, that's that. So we'll keep going. Like I said, next couple of steps, I'm still gonna be working around these canopies, white glue, get everything done, and then you'll see a coat of green, and then probably some more work to clean everything up, and then I'll hit it all with primer. And then I can really start going through and cleaning up, scribing where I need to scribe, sanding and filling where I need to sand and fill, make sure everything looks good, get that tail glued into place, get that seam cleaned up, and then I'll start working on those outer wings. And once I get the outer wings installed, then there's the radiator tubs that have to, the dog houses have to be completed. The exhaust pieces have to go in, but I might paint those and install those later. But we're getting very close to kind of getting ready for paint. So moving along with that one. Yeah, so let's keep going. And here I start gluing that horizontal stabilizer into place. It just gets sandwiched between the two tails. And you'll see, again, it's a little on the small side. I'm not sure if that's a issue with the way the kit was designed or if my fuselages weren't quite straight and square. Because no part of this kit lines up properly, it's very hard to get like a datum line to work off of. So you'll see where I kind of loop two clamps together, and I use that to hold the fuselages tight to squeeze that horizontal stab in there. At the end of the day, it worked well and it looks good, but again, I'm not going to start measuring this and squaring it off because it's just impossible to get everything straight. Okay, so here we are. I am about ready to glue these outer wing sections onto the main kit. And you'll see when I do this, just like the rest of this kit, it's potato. There are massive gaps in there. There is no positive, like look at the flappy wings, you can fly away. There's no real positive connection. Everything's super loose. So how do these go in? How do you do this? I mean, you can make a naval version of it and fold them up, but anyways, so what I'm gonna do is I've got some foam core here. I'm gonna make myself a little jig. Just something super simple that I can place this down into, and then I'm gonna make a little, see now I can't see what I'm doing. There we go. So I'm gonna make a little jig, just something that's gonna be positive location here with some pieces so that the wing will slide in and hold the plane square, and then the wings can be glued on, and I'll probably put a point at the front marking a front edge, and then something underneath the wing that holds it. Although I got to be careful because I have to make it so that it works bi-directional, so I can flip it around this way and glue the other wing on. So I'll have to figure that out, but anyways, luckily there's no torsion to it, it's just this way. So as long as, and there's a little bit this way, but not much. So I think that's all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna have a front and a back. A front and a back marked. On this, with a piece holding it, and then an end marker out there. So let's get that built. We'll jump to time lapse. I'll start to assemble it. I have a hot glue gun I'm gonna use to actually assemble everything. And we'll jump back here in a little bit and you can see all of this assembled. So there's the jig. I had to do a little bit of modification as I was working on it because I realized I needed to be able to make it omnidirectional. So plane fits in like that, wing slides on. I can make sure it's glued into place nice and solid. That is the right angle. I used the 3-view on my computer, and I kind of eyeballed the view to get the dihedral correct. But the key is it's an omnidirectional jig. So now I can just flip the plane around, put the plane in on that side, and I can glue this wing on as well using the same jig. And excuse me, as I have 2 aircraft to do, 2 different models, this is a good one. I have a 3rd one to go, so this jig will get put away. I will label it, and I can plop it away in the model room or the model closet. And I know what I'm looking at. So that's the plan. We'll get these wings glued on and yeah, keep on plugging along. And now that I have these outer wings glued on, you'll see I'm doing quite a bit of super glue and the baking powder, baking soda in there. Again, the wings didn't fit. There were massive gaps. I glued one wing with like standard model glue, plastic cement, and even the next day the wing was barely attached because the actual contact points between the plastic were so minimal. So I really had to fill those gaps with super glue. I added the baking powder to ensure that it was a solid connection, and then just sanded it down and puttied it to make sure those seams cleaned up. And the wings are really strong once it's all done. It just, again, you can't just expect to put this together with glue. It takes quite a bit of time and effort. And here I start working on the base for the kit. As per the usual with my kits, I just use kind of an off-the-shelf wooden plaque from a hobby. I get them from Michael's, but you can get them from any craft store like Michael's, Hobby Lobby. You probably get them on Amazon. Pretty much anywhere you can find that kind of arts and crafts stuff, you can get these pre-cut, pre-made bases. So I'm just going to drill a hole in the aircraft, insert an aluminum tube, and that allows the brass rod to seat somewhere and hold an angle. And then I just cut the brass rod, bend it to shape, drill a couple of holes, and put it all together. So I'm not going to final glue it until near the end of the kit being done, but this will at least allows me to get the process started of finishing the wooden base, cleaning it up, and getting ready. So here we are at the point of this build where I think I'm okay to wrap up this part one of the time lapse. Last little bit of puttying and sanding has been completed. I'm happy with where everything currently sits. It looks good to me. I'm not going to hit it with another coat of primer. I think I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the aluminum paint, the next color that I need to hit it with. So this particular one, I think I mentioned it a few times in this video already. It's going to be overall aluminum. I'm not going to do it alclad. It's not easy to do alclad over this finish because of the potato quality of the kit and all the sanding and scratches that are on it. As well, I'm 99% sure that these had an aluminum lacquer painted over them versus having them come bare metal. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna paint this just overall Vallejo aluminum. And that's gonna give me a good feel for what it's gonna look like. If I have to do a little bit more touch up like I'm doing, I can go ahead and putty and sand and repaint the aluminum, get a good solid coat on this, start to get some color. And then once I'm happy with how that looks, that coat of aluminum looks, I'm going to actually seal that, lock that down, and then move on to the next sets of colors. I don't want to get this thing, I'm still sanding here as I'm talking, just A, keep myself busy, and B, I see a few little things that are bothering me. But yeah, I want to get a good coat of aluminum on it. And once I have that base coat of aluminum, I'm going to go ahead and seal it. And I want to just seal it to make sure that it's sealed. I'll probably use Future. It's a good solid base that will lock this down, and that aluminum will stay. And then I'll mask off and I'll paint the next little bit. There's going to be some white stripes I got to do, some white tips on the tail, so the wing tips, the horizontal stab, and I think, yeah, there's some stripes on the vertical. This is the one I'm doing here, by the way. So there's going to be some white stripes on the vertical tails, a white stripe down the middle of the horizontal stab, and some white on the wingtips. So I went ahead and once I get the aluminum painted and I'm happy with the finish. Like I said, I'll Future it, I'll seal that in, then I'll mask and paint the white, and then I'll also mask off and paint the blue that goes around the nose, as well as the spinners. And from there, I will go ahead and then mask off and paint the black anti-glare that's on the forward part of the fuselage. And I'm gonna start, I wanna get that aluminum down, I wanna get it sealed, I wanna make sure I'm not gonna have any issues, and then like I said, I'll go through and pick off all the other colors. And then after that, I'll seal that again, and then I'll hit it with the decals, some light weathering, and then flat coat the whole thing. So that is where we are with this. So that's the end of part one. Depending on when you're watching this video, down in the description, you'll see the link to part two, which will be, as I said, the painting and everything else that needs to get done with this. If you don't see a link in the description, that's either because I forgot to put the link there, or more likely, I haven't finished part two yet. It's probably gonna take a couple of months after part one releases until part two will be finished. But don't you worry, I will have it up as soon as it is done if it's not up already. So that's where we are. As I said, we're gonna move on and get some painting done. I've also got the base started. It's gonna look something like, I mean, you would have seen that if you followed through the video. I probably had a little voiceover, but that's about how it's gonna look. You guys can't really see, it's kind of sitting on a bit of an angle. Some nice dynamic pose. So I'll get the model painted and finished off, a decaled, weathered. I'll get the base finished up and epoxy together, and we'll get this wrapped up. So that's it for part one. Thank you for watching, and keep an eye out for part two.